the first thing I want to do is I want to get to know a little bit about who's in the room. So one of the first things that I want to say is that prior planning prevents poor performance is not my own. I got it from my dad. And so to just get started and get to know you a little bit better, how many military people, current or former, do we have? None? Okay, volunteer firefighters? Power company alignment. I knew I wasn't going to get that one. My dad is all three of those things, retired of course, but he, all of my life, has used this phrase but there are two extra P's in his version that I'm not going to say because we're being recorded and he might put this on the internet. So anyway, my dad, he has this thing about planning. So every time I would make a mistake, like run out of gas and he had to come rescue me on my way to prom, he would say, you know, if you had planned this just a little bit better, you know, so it was always this recurring theme growing up. So it's no surprise that I ended up in incident response because I think planning is really important for that. Okay, so here's my disclaimer, and it is meant to be a little bit humorous. The opinions expressed in this presentation are not those of my employer. They're not necessarily my own, because, you know, my dad's, and they may not entirely be necessary. So my opinions are not necessarily required. I pushed the wrong button. There we go. I'm good. So one of the first things that I like to do when I'm giving any kind of presentation, any kind of training, any kind of talk, is to start with why. So we'll cover that. We'll talk about what an incident response plan is and what it isn't. You know, we'll cover why planning is so important, the aspects of the plan, the most important stage, and then we'll land the plane. So, and the reason I say land the plane is that this presentation covers this book. So the entirety of this book was covered in 8 hours, one day of a SANS class. And I've got it in 42 slides, approximately an hour of talk. So it's a very high level talk. And if you want to do a deep dive conversation, I'll make sure you get my contact information afterward and we can talk some more. So those are the expectations. Very high level. And we'll have some time for questions after a bit. All right, so why am I qualified to talk about this? Now, I tried not to do too much of a humble brag, but this is me. I'm a GX certified incident handler, and all that really means is that I'm very organized and I know how to create an index. So if you look at my book, you'll see that every page has keywords written on the bottom, and then I went through and typed them up in a 900 item index so that I could look it up in the 7 books that were covered with the test. So that doesn't prove I'm smart. It proves I'm organized and I can create an index, okay? The Certified Ethical Hacker, that's EC Council's version of something. And that one only proves that I can memorize things. Okay, trained monkeys can pass that test. You just have to memorize things. So don't be too impressed by that either. But the one that was the most important is this last one. Now, getting your master's is not the crucial part of this. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that's the one that taught me the most. I got my master's through Kaplan University. Okay, it's now Purdue University Global or some craziness. But it taught me collaboration, cooperation, multicultural interaction, because it's a global university. And remote. Nobody's in the same room. It's all online. So I learned everything I know about telecommuting, remote connection, getting to know people without actually meeting them. That's where I learned all of that. So that's why I'm kind of qualified to talk about it, because I can organize, collaborate, and memorize stuff. All right. So as far as the rest of the world goes, I'm not a techie, okay? So most of the people in this room, as far as, you know, I've learned, you know, those of you I've talked to individually, you're either students or you're working at Wynn or someplace else here in town. And you're not necessarily people. You know, if you know each other, you talk to each other, and if you don't, you really just don't talk to each other. So, but I am a people person, and that's good in my part of this field, because I started on the business side of the house. And so I was accounting for an infrastructure cabling company, and then I installed security systems. So the 16-wire card readers by the doors of buildings, oh dear God, please, not ever again, right? They're terrible. And I did that for a while. So I earned my bones there, was an accountant for a multifamily housing company, and then they noticed that I could fix computers. So I became their IT specialist. So for 42 locations across the Twin Cities, I took care of all their computers, remotely on site, everything with a power button. It was me. I once drove all the way to Duluth from St. Paul because the phone doesn't work. It just doesn't work, and I need the phone to work. And so I drive all the way to Duluth, and I walk in the door, and before I even get to the desk, you know, the desk is, she's sitting there, I can see that the power cord has come unplugged from her phone. So what was that, 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back, just to plug in the phone. So then I worked for a general contractor, worked on elevators and stuff. I did their IT and some of their accounting stuff. Then I worked for Cummins in southern Indiana. I went there to do governance, risk, and compliance. And I ended up doing a migration from Lotus Notes to Outlook. I'm also very warm, sorry. So in 190 different countries, we have, bless you, my gracious, there it goes again, bless you. So in 190 different countries, we had all of these people that had been on Lotus Notes since 1980 something, and we converted them all over to Microsoft Outlook, and I became the ambassador for Cummins migration from Lotus Notes to Outlook. Now, what does that mean? That means I'm on the phone again, right? And in meeting rooms and cameras on me, giving presentations about why Outlook is amazing and Lotus Notes email sucks. And it mostly worked, mostly. And then I moved back to Wisconsin, and I got a job at Great Lakes Education, and it's now owned by Nelnet. I don't know if everybody knew Great Lakes Higher Ed was recently purchased.
Yeah, I have a student working in that. It's part of education.
Yeah, yeah. My student loans are with Great Lakes too. Not with Nelnet though. I have one at Navient. Probably never pay it off. That's the master's problem. I blame the masters. Anyway, so why do you need, this is the more of the why. Why do you need an incident response plan? You need it so that you don't have as many surprises when something does happen. The problem with incident response is that it's very right now. Okay, so all of a sudden you get a phone call from the FBI that your website's been hacked and it's sending out whatever. And you don't have time to figure out what you're supposed to do. You have to figure out what you're supposed to do ahead of time. So that's what the plan is all about. Those procedures are key. If you've got them well documented ahead of time, you're not going to miss steps. You know that you have to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And when you go through the actual incident, if you hit one that you really don't have to do it, that's okay, right? You tried to think about as much of it as you could ahead of time. And then your exercises, as a part of the plan, help team members, and we'll talk more about that, understand what their roles are. Less finger pointing and blaming. One of the things in IT that drives me absolutely berserko is that we have a tendency to go, I didn't do it, it was, what's your name? Ben. Okay, Ben. It was Ben's fault. Ben came in late, and he forgot to push that button on the thing, and if he hadn't pushed, if he had pushed that button on the thing, we wouldn't be in this problem right now, right? So we have this problem of blaming and shaming, and that leads to fear, right? So you push buttons. Well, if they weren't showing, you wouldn't push them, right? Anyway, the point is, in IT, we have a tendency to blame, right? But if you have a plan ahead of time, you can practice and learn that blaming isn't what's important in a response. What you have to do is find what caused the issue. Don't blame them. Find what caused the issue, and then fix the problem. And you can deal with who gets yelled at later, okay? There's more working to resolve the problem, less finger pointing and blaming, and there's reduced time in between identifying that it's an issue and identifying the root cause of that issue. Again, not with the idea of blaming anybody. And then we reduce the heat of the moment mistakes because we have that plan, right? Any questions so far?
That's an important part for the development team as well.
Right, to have it all mapped out ahead of time, know what the end is so that...
Yeah, and the blaming thing in particular, it's more like, here's the issue, let's work as a team to resolve it right away and get it done.
Yeah.
You act on entity.
Okay, so audience participation trophy.
I also didn't get one. I can do it.
Okay, so that buys you a drink at the bar. You're welcome. So let's see, because we have a plan. So listening to Ben Franklin, if you fail to plan, you might as well plan to fail. And he's not going to get his drink. So what's an incident response plan? Before I show you the definition, I want to tell you what it's not. It is not a business continuity plan. It's not an emergency recovery plan. It's an incident response plan. A specific thing happened at a specific time, and we're responding to that specific thing that happened at a specific time. It's not a plane flew into the building. It's not anything like that. It's this thing happened, we have to mitigate this problem. All right. So here's the definition. Everybody loves definitions, right? This is straight from Wikipedia. You know it's right if it's on Wikipedia, right? So actually, no, this is from my SANS book. That it's an action plan for handling the use of computer systems that is contrary to the purpose of that system or network, systems and networks. So cyber intrusions, malware, all of those kinds of things should be addressed with your incident response plan. Now, there are some important things to know. You cannot possibly cover every scenario in an incident response plan. It can't be done. You can try really hard, but you can't do it. There are new threats, new vectors of attack, new ways to get you on your network knees every day, multiple times a day, all day long. So knowing all of them ahead of time and planning for every scenario isn't a realistic goal. But you have to start somewhere. And just when you thought you knew everything, somebody, because we're in IT, will be happy to point out that you don't know everything and that you haven't covered everything. All right. So prior planning prevents poor performance. It's a lot of P's. It's hard to say. These are my favorite. This is my favorite approach to incident handling, mostly because it's the one I know. You know, you stick with what you know. The most common is by NIST, 800 something. Wait, I wrote it down. 800-61 revision 2. The Computer Security Incident Handling Guide. That's a mouthful. This is Pickerel. We came up with programmers initiate. We came up with different words for and it was fun. We actually had a contest. Mine won. It was like, I don't remember. I'll have to tell you some other time. But preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and then lessons learned. Every now and then we have to go backwards. But these are the things that we do. We have this preparation, we identify what's going on, we contain it as best we can, then we eradicate it and kind of recover from that, get things back in production. So we'll dive a little bit deeper, but those are all the steps. So preparation. The goal of preparation is to get everything ready ahead of time. So you've got your people, you get them ready ahead of time. You've got your policies and your data, your software, your hardware, all of that stuff. Planning it ahead of time so that you have it ready when it's time to respond. And this is important because in the middle of an incident is not the best time to figure out if you can run a command to know if your operating system has been modified somehow, or if your baseline has been modified. Your systems have been modified from their baseline somehow. It's not the best time to try to do that in the middle of an incident. And then it's also not a good time to learn how to get good forensic images, to get memory dumps from your systems, to do bit-by-bit copying of your disk without modifying the disk. Does anybody know how to do that? I have people for that, by the way. I'm sorry? A write blocker, exactly. And do you have the tools for that? Do you have the disk imaging equipment where you are? Do you have people for that? If you're in a small company, you may have to be it, right? You might be the only one. You might be the one who has the jump bag that has all of the equipment in it, the extra drives and the extra write blocking tools to get your forensic copies. You might have the laptop that's got your SIFT workstation on it from SANS. Anybody use SIFT? Callie? Okay. Callie's fun. I like the logo. You're welcome. I told you I'm not a techie. I can run some commands, but I'm not your techie. Let's see. So one of the things that I tend to do is I use cheat sheets and I use posters. And I think that SANS is a really good source for posters. And I'm not going to click on this one just because I don't know that we have that much time to do that kind of thing. But we might come back to it later. If we know what normal is, we can find the evil, right? So in our identification stage, we have different tools if we're a good-sized company anyway. I mean, if you're a small company, you may not have half of these things. But in order to identify whether you've got an incident going on or not, you have to have some things, right? So on your network perimeter, your firewalls, your items that are in your DMZ, routers, IPS, IDS, not IDS. Yes, IDS. Host perimeter, right? So the firewalls to look at things going in and out of your hosts. System level antivirus, endpoint DLP, those kind of things. And then of course at the application level, whether it's a web app or an application server, cloud service, know what all of those things are supposed to look like so that if something's going wrong, you can see that it is. All right, so then for containment. The goal of containment, that's really tiny. Sorry guys in the back. The goal of containment is to keep things from getting worse. So, the Hippocratic oath, right? We're not doctors, right? But the first thing that they say is first do no harm, right? So the first thing we want to do is make sure we don't make it worse with our response. So we want to do a review of the situation, thoroughly review it, before we do anything, really. And these are like minutes, right? So it's not like thousands and thousands of terabytes of data are leaving before we figure it out. We can do this quickly. But you still need to do it. You need to analyze what it's doing. And then do what you can to keep that evidence intact, because you might, depending on your business, need to present evidence in court. Being at the federal student loan level, we've got an hour from when we first think something might have happened to report it to the federal student aid organization. So we've got an hour. So it might be different for you. It might be, PCI requirements. It might be, oh Lord, I don't know, Graham-Leach-Bliley, SOX. Anyway, any of those kind of regulatory requirements. PERC, right? Did I hear you say you're with the city and you do some kind of energy thing, right? Power?
Yep.
Okay, so the NERC requirements.
Actually, we bought an insurance policy. So every time we have an incident, we call them and they know exactly what we have to do.
Okay.
So they tell us what has to be reported, when it has to be reported, because they're kind of on the hook to cover all the legal stuff. Which
That's
is kind
nice.
of helpful. You've got someone that's an expert in the field.
Yeah.
Makes those calls for you.
Yes. We actually have cybersecurity insurance also. Yes, I called on you. We have cybersecurity insurance also, but we also have 14 million borrowers. And with the average cost of a data breach, right, $120 per user, if you can imagine, you can imagine with 14 million borrowers at $120 average per person, it could be a little ludicrous, right? And so our cybersecurity insurance wouldn't even minimally hit it, right? So hundreds and thousands of dollars, but millions and millions and millions of dollars. So, okay, so we do whatever we do to keep the evidence intact. And we talked about disk images and memory images. Yes, I know, it's really hot in here. I'm sorry, guys. We should open windows or something. Yeah, all the knobs are gone. It's fine. And then remember that for containment, there are short-term and long-term options, right? So, you first, do some things to make sure that you've got your images captured, forensic images. But then you can do things like pull a network cable or move it to a different segment of the network, just so that you can kind of contain the situation. And then longer-term options, of course, involve, removing the system completely from the network and working on it. All right. So, eradication. Yes, this is really fast, right? But that's because there's the most important stage. We're going to talk about the most important stage, and we're going to argue about what you think it is. Eradication, the goal is to remove the attacker's presence and his artifacts, determine the cause and symptoms, of course, and then improve your defenses so it doesn't happen again. Lots of things that you can do in that area to that end. It depends on what the problem was to begin with, of course. And then, of course, recovery. The goal is to get the system back online, or systems, or the network. And I pushed the wrong button again. And then when you do that, you have to validate that system. So, there's got to be like a test plan to, make sure that the thing is working right. And ultimately, the system owner is responsible to sign off on the fact that it's back up and in service. And then you have to keep an eye on it. Make sure you didn't miss anything. Were there any back doors that you missed? So you have to keep watching it for instances of reoccurrence so that you don't end up in just the same boat that you were before you started the response. And then the lessons learned, you have your after-action report. The goal is documentation, and I did say stifle your groans. We're in IT, we hate documentation. We don't like it. I was reading somebody's code the other day, and he commented a line in there and said, "I really hate this, I don't know why it's here." And I emailed the sales guy who sent me the script, because it was a script that was for a tool that we own, an appliance on our network. And I sent him an email, I said, "I'd like to buy this guy a drink." I really hate this. I don't know why it's here. Anyway, what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and then try to reach a consensus and get sign-off from the members of your response team. Very important to do that, because otherwise it's he said, she said, further down the line. Get everybody to sign off on it. And if you have a dissenting opinion, let that stand. Right? So you don't have to agree with me. You can be wrong. I'm just kidding. You don't have to agree with me, right? So we've got this consensus, but this guy disagrees, and it's important that when you give your report, they know that there's somebody who doesn't necessarily agree with this, so that that voice can be heard too. It's not ideal, but you're not always going to get everybody on the same page. Mostly because of IT. And I'm smarter than you. Not really. But you know what I mean. We tend to give off an air.
It's like application design.
So hold the lessons learned as soon as possible. Some say a week. I say a few days. Depends on how long this took, right? If you're burnt out because you've been 24/7 on site trying to resolve this thing, don't hold it right after you're done. Give it a day or two. And then, of course, make your recommendations so that you can move forward. So, what do you think? What stage of that do you think is the most important? Go.
One that's not listed, which is update and adjust.
Well, that would...
Because your lessons
yeah.
learned can't be one one-way door. You have to go back and
Yeah.
update your plan, update your procedures.
Okay.
And everything
That's
I've
fair.
seen in the real world has been lessons learned. Well, done. Got to get back to the real job because we spent 2 weeks
Yeah.
worrying about this problem.
Okay. That's fair.
Downtime, actually more so the stop the hacker.
Okay. So you think that's the most important part?
Right.
Okay. Wait a minute. Did you get a free drink yet? Okay. That's all I got. I'd still like it if you participate, though. Who else? I mean, is there a stage here? Let's give a little refresher. Here are the stages. God bless you. My goodness. He's allergic to me. It's common. Very common. You know, I support you. Right on, man.
I see some Java 5 programming.
Right on. I'm allergic to this, but I love it, so I'm going to drink it anyway. Okay, so here's the quick refresher. Anybody else want to take a stab at what you think is the...
And I think you can argue that one is important. If you never identify it, that's a serious problem. But I mean, yeah, any one of these, taken to the extreme, could be.
I think the eradication is always the biggest challenge because you really never know if you got all the artifacts out of the network. Those guys, you know, I would guarantee there's multiple people in our network right now just messing around finding stuff out.
Yep.
Time it's kind of like bacteria.
Yep. How long have they been there? What have they been leaving behind? You know, is there some executable file deep dark in some, you know, system somewhere that I don't know about?
It was brought in by somebody in accounting, I'm sure.
Yep. It's that jump drive. That jump drive I carried back and forth to home. Okay, so we could, you know, argue a little bit about it, and we could talk about it for a while, but I could also tell you my opinion, which, by the way, if I have to give you the disclaimer again, my opinion is not necessarily necessary, right? My opinion is always be prepared. And that goes back to, like I said, what my dad said, that if I had planned a little better, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And why do I think preparation is so important? So the first thing is your employees, your coworkers, and this is where Crystal says things that are ludicrous, right? So the problem exists between the keyboard and chair, the PEBCAC error, we've heard of that one, the ID10T error, the loose nut behind the keyboard, that one's my favorite, right? So the problem is, though, if we're not teaching them how to do things right, and we're not continuously reiterating the importance of these minor practices, like don't click on a link in an email from somebody that you don't know, and you know, explaining to them the differences in the different alphabets on the planet and how this A is not really an A, it's a Kurdish character or whatever the heck it is, right? So once a year for 1 hour in a security awareness training is not enough, right? So there are things that I have recommended for my business, and they've actually taken me up on this. I'll be doing lunch and learns. Have you guys ever done a lunch and learn? Just tell everybody to bring their bag lunch, and we talk about fill in the blank, right? So, you know, email safety 1 week, USB drives and why they're not allowed in our business, right? Ways to protect yourself at home, what you should do to protect your home Wi-Fi router, why you might not want your thermostat to have just free and open access to the internet with a default password enabled.
Right, you get your best friend that's not for the Wi-Fi password, and next thing you know, using your router, changing it.
Exactly. So,
I got some.
he has some friends. He's using air quotes when he says friends.
I'm a programmer, so like, he's the networker.
Well, I have 3 different segments on my home Wi-Fi router. I have me, I have my family who cannot be trusted, and then I have guests. And they all are password protected. But even that, you know, I'm still going to screw that up, right? Because I can't, I'm not 100% nerd. I can't protect myself 100% of the time because I can't know everything. All right, so security awareness training, it's important, but once a year, 1 hour, not enough. You know, just keep in front of your people. Security awareness posters, lunch and learn, trainings, conversations in the hall. You know, it's difficult. We're a little bit IT. We don't like to talk to people, but it's important. Some of the things that we haven't done at Great Lakes, because our CISO isn't a fan of it, we haven't done email phishing tests to our users. But they're very effective, right? So, and our company having just been sold, the company that bought us, they do the phishing tests. So I'm anxious to see what happens when they phish us. I can hardly wait. Go ahead.
One thing that I do, I'm just curious, is a good idea is whenever I get an email and someone forwards to me, it's like, hey Chris, should I click on this? I'm like, no, don't do it. If with their permission, I'll send it up and be like, hey everyone, look what Tammy caught. It's a fake email from the Department of Public Instruction. Like, good on her. Like, let's all give her a round of applause for catching it. Is that? You guys think that's a good idea?
It's a good idea as long as you remove the clickability on that link, in my opinion.
There's applications.
That or you edit the link to go to a site that you have control of that says, why did you click that? Right? So that then they have the. But I do think it's important, to give that positive reinforcement to your users when they catch something. Yeah, that's good.
They're scared of repercussions. They're scared of, oh yeah, I might have clicked on this or whatever.
Yeah, and that's all part of that fear, blame, shame culture that we've,
That's really a positive. Hey, good on Tammy County. Actually, she's an accountant for, not clicking on this email from FedEx.
Good job, Tammy.
The best thing to do is teach them how to look at the base URL that comes underneath the site, like the name, the email name. And if they don't recognize the email, then just don't mess with it.
Yep. That is a good one.
I use it all the time. I don't want to deal with emails. Sorry about it works.
Yeah, that's true, right? For crazy, they won't forward it. They'll just
right.
pretend it didn't happen.
Right. We actually set up a shared mailbox for our security operations center, and we told people if they had any question to just forward it to that. And then they would scrub it and they'd run attachments through, let's see, what do they use? Cuckoo. They don't use VirusTotal anymore, and I haven't gotten an answer as to why. But there are just a number of things that our experts, I'm not one of them, can use to try to find out if something's legit or not. And 90% of the time, it's nothing, right? But it's just that 10%, right? You get somebody to click on a link and off to some watering hole, off to some downloaded nastiness, and you're in big trouble.
Especially when your kind of stuff requires UAC, disabled, all users of local admins, map to the root of the accounting software.
You do know that we're recording this, and he's going to put it on the internet, right? Please don't self-identify where you work. No, stop. No. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. All right, so, we don't do that yet, but I'm anxious to see the results when the new company decides to phish our users. So, preparing further the policies, right? So, policies are important. They're not as important, in my opinion, as the procedures, but you should have them. Otherwise, people don't know what the expectations are. You should work with legal if you a rep in legal that you like. And even if you don't, you should try to work with them anyway. Make sure that things are legit so that it's presentable and you can back it up, right? Your policies should be good. Display a banner when users log in. Does anybody have that? Where you are? You guys don't have a login banner? Okay.
It's not prioritized on the list.
It's not prioritized.
Business has
We do this, and most people don't read it. That's why I was going to ask. That was going to be the follow-up question. If you have one of these banners, have you ever read it? Ours is very interesting, and I'm not going to tell you what it says. But it is. I mean, it says basically that we can see everything that you're doing. We're looking at everything that you're doing try not to do anything bad. That's essentially what it says. That's true. I think my job's interesting anyway because I get to talk all the time. I know you're shocked by that. So have your users signed an acceptable use agreement? You know, that's a pretty important thing, right? They need to know what the policies are, and then you have them sign off on the fact that they've read and understood and will follow them. Yeah, they haven't understood it. Ours isn't that big. Ours is like...
You know, the next thing is going to be just somebody reading it out loud to your speakers. And you have to wait for it.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to make that recommendation, especially for the people who have to get on the phone.
Don't tell them I made the recommendation.
No. I forgot your name already. I'm terrible. Oh, okay. Hi, Andrew. Now I can tell them Andrew told me to do it. You're all Andrew. Okay, good to know. So more preparation, the response team itself, right? So if you're in a small company, like I said, this could be just 2 or 3 person on a team. But if you're at a big company, utilize these folks, right? That doesn't mean that you have to have somebody from admins, telecom, datacom, legal, help desk, security, and a business liaison every time you're replying to an incident, responding to an incident. That's not what that means. What it means is your core team has a designated person to reach out to. If you know you're in a legal mess because of what you're looking at, or if you suspect you're in a legal mess, it's handy to know somebody in the legal department, right? So get all these people set up ahead of time, talk to their supervisors, the leads of those teams, find out who's the best person to talk to, who knows the most about most of the systems, and get them on your team. And basically, there's no right or wrong answer for any of that, how you do it. The importance is to get it prepared ahead of time, and then just do it your way. So the plan itself, I cannot share my plan with you because I can't. I can't share my plan. But
This is what I'll be checking for.
Nice.
let me Google that for you. Ta-da! The very first one, Building an IR Plan. It's a free IR ebook from Rapid7. Anyway, just trying to be smart, sorry. Thought it was funny. Crystal thinks she's funny. Anyway, there are a few that are linked on the slides. If you want to see them when the slides are posted, you'll be able to click on them. They were some pretty good ones, so I thought I'd put those links directly in. Let's see, procedures, we talked a minute ago about that. You can't possibly cover everything, but you have to start somewhere, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? So what's the thing that keeps you up at night? Start there. I'm sorry? Is my computer in a botnet? Where there's this tool that's called Are You Botted? You might want to start there.
Sleeperware that can be activated anytime you start using processing power. Sites are starting to do it now too, so I've seen Malwarebytes pop up a message that's like, hey, they're trying to use your processing power.
Yep.
Chrome mining Bitcoins right now.
I keep it off.
It depends on which add-ons and plugins you've got enabled and downloaded, right?
Just JavaScript you can do. You don't get to add.
Oh, I
Just
suppose.
JavaScript can mine Bitcoins. Not very many, but.
And isn't the new one can live past the session too, right? So you can close Google and it's still doing its thing.
All the advanced things they added, so they don't need mobile apps anymore. You can have like an offline website. They're using that to add features to the platform.
Nice. Okay, so anyway, figure out what keeps you up at night and start there. Or if it's too complicated, don't start there. Do something easy. Andrew, focus. Anyway, the goal is to not be stuck in analysis, right? So don't get an analysis paralysis. Pick something, start there, and if you get stuck, move on to something else. But the goal is to do something. So why do we exercise the plan? This is part of preparation. Exercise, as you'll see, is not a 4-letter word. It's technically 2 4-letter sections that are put together, right? So it's 2 4-letter words, right? I'm just kidding. So why should we exercise the plan? Anybody have any ideas?
How do you know your backups work?
Okay, that one's good. Backups.
You know where your plan is.
Do you know where your plan is?
Good practice it.
Isn't that awesome, right? So one of the first things that I did in my first tabletop that I held, I just took over incident response 1.5 years ago. And the very first tabletop, I didn't know what my scope was, right? I'm like, oh, I can do like active shooter, right? Turns out that's not part of my scope. They're like, Crystal, the name of the team is Security Incident Response. I'm like, that's a security incident. There's a dude in our building, right? And so they're like, no. Information security, Crystal. I'm like, then it's not an SIRT, it's an ISIRT. Right? Yeah. I think I need him on my team. He gets me. He totally gets me. So why should we exercise the plan? We want to make sure our team members know what their roles are. One of the guys on my team, he is a Dungeons and Dragons guy. Anybody D&D in here? None of you, right? Nobody's D&D. See? I thought for sure I could use my 20-sided die with this crew. Anyway, he's a die-hard D&D guy. And he's always talking to stuff that's not his deal, right? So he does web app security. And we'll be talking about, God, I don't know, something that the SOC discovered is happening at the Egan site. And it's just, you know, a user who's gotten some kind of malware running that's going out and command and control and all of that. And so this guy, he's like, forever, well, you know, we could do this and this and this and this and this and not let the SOC people answer the question, right? Because it's their deal, right? So this last time I said, I'm gonna need you to roll for initiative, right? So he rolls the die. And I said, okay, what'd you get? And he's like, 5. Oh, you're 13? Okay. 15, okay. So I popped up a troll and I said, a troll just sat on you. You can't talk for 5 minutes, right? And so he's like, you have to make these things fun, right? Because you get a whole bunch of people in a room. You're like, we're going to have a tabletop. This is serious business. It's not, right? The goal is to get everybody to loosen up, get to know each other, go through your procedures and the plan, and then have a little fun with it everywhere you can. Make sure your team members know the plan. Once a year, I host a training. And I say, these are the things that are new about our plan. And it's empty. I'm just kidding. It's not always empty. This FBI contact change, and you know, but we still have to go through and we have to say these are the major sections. If you look at page 20, you'll find. If you look at page 44, you'll find. And on page 492, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Where was I? I got talking about D&D and got distracted.
Exercising plans.
It's the troll, right? Okay, so ensure that your procedures match your current business needs. So this is why it's important to have somebody from the business that's a part of your response plan, or your response team. Because if you're doing a response tabletop and you're going through the procedure and that person's in the room, they can catch when things are going to go awry with their system that you're about to take offline. They might know that there's a piece missing in that response, right? So if they're not in the room, you're not necessarily going to catch those mistakes and not necessarily match the business needs. Whoops. I saw that. And the phone. Okay. Anyway, then we also want to develop a muscle memory for responding to incidents. The more you do it, the better you get at it, the faster it goes, that kind of thing. A lot of activity going on over there. I was distracted, sorry. Okay, so we also want to develop relationships on the team. I mentioned that a little bit ago. it's important to have that interaction in a tabletop. Pick on people that are being a pain, right? Talking to stuff they shouldn't. And even if they're not, pick on them anyway. Now, why do you say that? What if, and try to come up with things to just question a little bit, because trust but verify is a real thing, right? I don't know your job. I don't. But if I ask you questions, it might make you think about something just a little bit differently. And if you don't know me, you don't know that I don't actually think I'm smarter than you. You don't know that I'm asking questions so that you can be better, or that I can be better. Again, improve your knowledge of the policies and procedures and processes. Improve skill sets of the people on the team. Figure out where your gaps are. If you find out that there's nobody on the team who knows how to capture a forensic image, we know what we got to work on next, right? And then, of course, remediating those gaps so that you've got your team ready to go before you have an actual incident. You are so funny. What is so funny?
He's our guy.
He does it all. All right, so power loss. I covered power loss in one of my incidents that I started to tell you. One of the first ones that I did. I did active shooter, and the next one was going to be power loss. Where's the plan? Who's got it printed out somewhere and locked in a cabinet, right?
You have it one time, and then you have a backup power supply for that one specific machine.
Right.
And you have a generator for this entire building.
Right, but did they think about it? Not until the tabletop, right? So just those little things that you can, bring up in a group situation, and they don't have to be complicated. This one script that I did. Okay, yes, I did scripts for tabletops. I got a guy from Datacom, and I handed him a script. And so he was in the back of the room. We collaborated, right? Here's what your answers are, and all of that. And legal actually had to correct us in this one, because he said out loud that the encryption key for the backup was on a tape in the same box as the other tapes that were encrypted with that encryption key. And it doesn't happen, right? It doesn't. But I had him say that in the script. And so 3 of my security team members on the incident response team said out loud in the presence of legal, somebody's getting fired. So then we had to segue into a 5-minute why we can't say those things out loud in the middle of a tabletop exercise. And this is why you do it, to learn what you should and shouldn't do. You focus on the facts. Always the facts. And you don't make blame statements, or if, what was your name again? Ben. If Ben had just pushed the button when he got in.
Many times.
You did push it. You were just late.
I said
You pushed it twice. Anyway, no guessing, no blaming, no somebody's getting fired. None of that business in your tabletops or in your actual response. So, let's land the plane. Oh, that was tabletop exercises. The important thing to remember, first of all, relationships are crucial when it comes to incident response. You have to know who does what in what areas of your company, who you can count on when you're in a bind. Because this is a Band-Aid, right? At the beginning, it's chaotic, it's a mess. And if you don't know who you're supposed to talk to in what department for what problem, you're in trouble, right? So that's important. The relationships are crucial. Planning is imperative. Get these things done ahead of time, talk them out. Preparation's key. And then, of course, practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but it does make us all just a little bit better. So, any questions about that? Okay, so we've got some time left. And I thought we would. So I brought a little preparation kung fu, also known as how the critical security controls can help us with incident response. Does everybody have a handout? The one that's got all the PowerShell on it. Did you get one? Anybody? Anybody? Here we go. So we'll get to that handout in just a second, but in December, I went to,
Yeah, there was full.
it's all right. It's that time of day. You've had a beer. You've had a beer, you've spilt a beer, you've spilt your pretzels. It's all right. We're all friends here. I went to a class in December, and it was on the critical security controls. It was a SANS class, of course. And one of the first things he said in the first day of the class, and it was a 5-day class, one of the first things he says is, we're about to change all of this. And I'm like, we just spent $5,500 on this class, and they're about to change all of it, right? So I don't know if you knew this, but there's a new version out. Yeah, a couple months ago.
Oh.
So our numbers are reordered.
Oh. It's
That was for the networking portion of today's show. I'm just kidding. So anyway, he said, we're going to redo all these numbers. So these numbers are wrong. Number 3 is now 5. Number 4 is number 3. The number 5 is number 4. You're welcome. But they're all the same, right? But the reason I have these up here is that if you don't know the devices that are on your network, you have no idea what's going on. You have to know them. That has to be 100%. If you don't have that 100%, you can't have an inventory of your software at 100%. You can't, because you don't know all the devices. So therefore, you can't know all of the software. You could have some laptop on some desk somewhere that you don't have identified that's got all the wrong stuff, not getting updated, all missed, right? So these things help with incident response because you've got your inventory. You know where things are. You know what segments of your network they live on. You know what versions of software are out there. Your vulnerability scanning with Control 3. Your vulnerability scanning is checking all of those devices to make sure that all those applications are up to date. So you're able to prevent some of your incidents, but you're also able to respond better because all of those things have been done. So that's the 1 through 5. But I wanted to share with you, and that's what the handout is, right? So I have to confess to you. When I first got into information security from accounting, right, I thought APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. Okay, so that's a threat that just keeps going. Okay, I get it, right? So it took me a little while to figure out that APT1 is actually a hacking group. You knew that, right? It took forever for me to figure that out. So anyway, this is just a bunch of things that you can do, a script that you can run that puts all of these things in a baseline kind of file so that you can then do a compare later. And I think I forgot to put the compare statement on. But you guys, if you know PowerShell, you can figure it out, right? You'll ask him. Yeah, he was pretty excited about it, right? So this is Control 14. It's controlling access based on the need to know. And one of the things with the security controls is automation. They really want you to automate this stuff because then it's easier on you, right? You don't have to have a list of things to do every day. So that's just something that you can use to automate response to APT1. Then this script is a get your access control list. So these are get child item, you get your baseline. You do that ahead of time, obviously. And then later, you get your baseline, you make a current with your get ACL command. And then you compare the two and you send an email to yourself. Big fun, right? And then this one's for OpenVAS. Anybody use OpenVAS? Also known as Nessus used to be. Yeah. Anyway, this is for that. And this one helps you detect wireless access points connected to your wired network. So if you've got people that are bringing in their own access points, you can find them this way. Yeah. I helped you, Andrew? Yay! Okay. Okay, and then this one is also, this one's Control 18 for application software security. And this one is just looking for changes in users. So that is the end of what I have to say. 1 hour almost on the button. Do we have any questions?